Hello.
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 Good evening or good afternoon. Hi, Eamon.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How about you?
Good to see you. Not
Likewise.
yet. But,
Hello.
seeing your photo.
Yes,
Hello,
just
everyone.
1 second.
Hello, Patricia.
Hello.
Hello.
Everybody.
Hi.
You do have a new sweater this time, right?
Yes. 100%. Today I got my certificate, by the way. I finished the whole 4 courses. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, man. Did you enjoy the capstone, Eamon?
Yes, of course. I was a bit surprised with the last requirement, but you know, I used to teach in the university, so I'm used to kind of presenting and stuff. So I did the video and uploaded it to YouTube privately, of course, and shared the link. So it was nice. And I also reached out to the colleagues that were with us the last time we had a meeting, and asked them to do the evaluation. Did the same, of course. So it was kind of fast.
Very good.
Yeah.
Congratulations again.
Thank you so much.
So welcome
Thank you so much.
everyone to our new talk. It's always a pleasure to be with you for these moments. We agreed on a new topic for this evening, and we really want to leave the floor to you. The topic is managing across cultures at work, or cultural differences at work. And the way we would like to proceed is to leave you the floor and give you a chance to share with us some issues you may have had with cultural management, differences, obstacles that challenged you as in your leadership, in your relational competence. And from your stories and from what you want to share, we will interact and react, because that's our way of working and way of being, that we really want to engage you rather than, you know, just spreading the word. So you all have done at least some of Savoir-Relier, and you know how it's important to place the conditions for you to be able to share and to exchange your points of view and your ideas. So whoever wants to lead the talk and share an experience on managing across cultural differences, this is how we're going to start. I want to thank Philippe for being here, as well as Camila and Camille and our team. And hi, Patricia. Great to see you. So please go ahead. Who wants to just grab the mic and speak up about managing across cultural differences? So who wants to share a story about hurdles or issues with managing cultural differences at work?
Hi, Valerie. I start.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. I think it's more hurdle from my side because I work in an international company, and I'm French. And we work with Dutch people, and I think the biggest hurdle we have to manage cultural differences is around meeting during the lunch hours. It's kind of difficult to find meeting slots, and our Dutch colleagues are quite fond of sending us invitation between noon and 2 p.m. And on my side, and I think it's on French people's side, it's really hard for us to skip lunch. And so sometimes it's a bit difficult for our colleagues to understand that we need actually to have a break at lunch, not because we need 1 hour and a half to eat, but just to connect with our colleagues and engage in discussion. So it's more of a hurdle than an issue. I think it's cultural.
Yeah, thank you. That's interesting. They're not that far from us, right? And yet there are some differences of practice, and and I've been working with Dutch, and I know exactly what you mean. But when you say they skip lunch and they don't understand that we need to have a break, is it all systematically happening, or is it in your group, or is it specific, or happen from time to time, or is it just systematic?
At least I would say the majority of my Dutch colleagues tend to skip lunch. They have other rituals. I think for lunch they eat very lightly and eat earlier in the evening.
So have you noticed with this group thing that you do and they don't? So in other words, the opposite. For example, leaving at 5.
Yeah.
Right? That might be a kind of a counterpart of your. So when you face something like that, what do? Do you sit down and talk about it, or just say, well, it's an hurdle and we have to cope with that?
I think the approach we had so far is to accept our differences and at least to try to accept that we are not available during lunchtime or as much as possible, and that we accept that after 4:30 we won't be able to reach them. But I think it could be managed in a better way if we had rules of what is acceptable for our company, for our teams, and to make sure that everyone understands the other parts.
Yeah. So in this very case of the Dutch not really taking lunch or sandwiches that are usually terrible, by the way, and at 5 o'clock they would just sort of go off and you stay. What sort of rules would you propose for company? What would be your suggestion?
My suggestion would be actually to make it a clear rules. So far, it's an informal one, and it tends to vary from people to people. Yeah. And it might be perceived wrong when a French colleague refuses a meeting during lunch. So if we formalize those rules to ensure that the company as a whole accepts those rules and say it's okay for employees to ritualize either their lunch hour or their after work hour. So I would make it an official company endorsement of those rituals.
Okay.
Right.
Is there anybody in the group who is present with us right now who is Dutch? Who could maybe react to Sonia's experience?
Hi, this is Vaibhav speaking. I'm not Dutch, but just I want to add to what Sonia was just saying. According to me, it's not a matter of being French or Dutch, because nowadays we work in a very international environment. So people in UK start 1 hour later from us. Same is the case for people in Portugal, in Lisbon. And when we talk to US, you have many time zone there. But if you consider the one on the eastern side, probably they start when it's our afternoon. And then we have India, where we start, they start around 3.5 hours after us or before us. So even when we work in France, we don't consider their lunch time or their the break time in between. So for example, we come to office 9:30 a.m. and we take our coffee and we put our meeting, and then we have an Indian colleague who are invited. It's their lunch time. So that means we should not do the meeting in the morning. Then it's our lunch time. Then the lunch time for our UK colleagues, and then from we need to wait for the US to come. But when the US comes, it's probably lunch time for the colleagues. It's for the end of day for the Indian colleagues. So I guess it's a very difficult subject for any organization to address in terms of rules. I think it's something people has to come up within the team to find slots where everyone is required, and then be flexible for the other timings.
Definitely.
That's just a point.
Yeah.
And I think it's also about maybe everybody's making some efforts. Just to give an example, I also work in a company, and I'm located in Europe, but we are working with US and Asia. Usually there is seminars which are organized once a year, but due to COVID, obviously this year it wasn't possible. So we decided that we will have a 5-day kind of, not full day because it's impossible. You can imagine so long web access, but a bit shorter days, but 5, right? And that's also quite challenging from the hours perspective because it's always night somewhere for somebody. So it was agreed that we just share, and we will have at least one day for somebody. It will be a bit crazy hours, from 1:00 a.m. till 5, but it's everybody's taking the burden. One day it's US, another day it's the people in Singapore, another day us in Ireland, and at the end of the day, everybody made an effort, and we are laughing about it and understanding. Okay, there is no ideal timings, right? And it's the same. I'm working with India, so in the morning I wake up and I was like, oh my God, there is already all these emails from US and from India, and at the end you understand, well, these are their working hours, and everybody's just trying to do a little bit of kind of effort, to understand each other. So in the situation that was described, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the name. Maybe I would just suggest once a week to try each other's habits, to skip lunch for the ones and for the others, try a break, something like this, just to experience it. And then to afterwards share experience and laugh about it, because in these hard times, we are in lockdown and we are told that we will be in lockdown till 12th of April. So we just need to find, any solutions, yes, and anything just to share and exchange.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Natalia. Yeah, this is very helpful. Catherine, you want to say something, or Manan, maybe?
Yeah, sure. So I'm in Dubai, right? And since last 1 year, everybody's been facing the challenges with the lockdown. A lot of, work's been happening online and stuff. When you realize that you don't really have a personal life, you're probably working double the hours, right? So this is something which I would like to share from my experience. When you see, you are probably working overtime, and that's when we realize that when we actually work from the office premises, you perhaps have a set time for breaks, lunch, breakfast, whatever. When you're home, everybody is trying to do their best to show that they are more efficient and they're working. So one of the solutions is simple. Set up a meeting, book the space for the calendar and show that you are occupied so nobody can set that meeting. So I have a colleague who, they work across the globe, okay? And they don't really have a policy of lunch in their office. So everybody is in a different time zone, all right? So if the calendars vacant or there's space, anybody can make a request to set a meeting with you. So the simple way is just book that slot, maybe even if it is 20 minutes or half an hour, reserve it so that nobody else can send it to you. That's how I look at it.
And Manan, when you're sharing this example, one point that you're mentioning, which I have find useful, coaching executives and teams in the past year with COVID and with the even more difficult organizing your time, is having shorter times, meeting times, rather than, usually you will schedule a meeting for an hour, or you put 1 hour in your calendar. Then if you shorten it by, say, it's 30 minutes or even 40 minutes, so it's not the hour, you give some slack to yourself, and you have
absolutely.
Because what I have found in my sharing and experience in the past year is that in the work that you're doing, you always are late in your meeting, and the next meeting has already started. So if you're a professional and you want to be on top of things, then you run your whole day and you never have a break. So organizing your time and splitting your time in shorter periods so that you can focus, so the quality of your attention can be better. Maybe less meetings, shorter meetings, but more focused. you will gain efficiency and save energy for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a very good idea.
I can just react on this. I think this question around the logistics, as I was said, I think a couple of good suggestions and say, oh, it's a question of compromise. Everybody's going to make a certain effort for that to work because nobody's right, nobody's wrong. It's just a matter of organizing differently, time differences, but lunchtime and extra hours, etc. Now there is another dimension to that, which is about the actual content of the challenge. So it's not just a matter of timing, but it's also a matter of how, for example, you run a meeting. Valérie was mentioning the fact that when you are in a Zoom situation where you have to be more effective and go to the point, well, okay, maybe the Anglo-Saxons who tend to have meetings pretty well scheduled, etc. Western countries or the Latin countries, for instance, will manage that slightly differently. And it's very important not to get into stereotypes, but it's happening that some people need some time to get into the subject and they need to have some kind of social interaction before they actually get to the point. Sometimes the decision-making process can be collective versus, done by the leaders. So if you go to Sweden, for instance, the process of taking decision is going to be slightly different. And that's something that happens. So not only the problem of time comes in, but also, do we accept that some people might take decisions differently, right? Are they going to listen to me? Are they going to sort of take my account on board? In a very hierarchical society where the boss will decide and nobody believe it's wrong. It's say, okay, that's your role. In some other culture, it's not acceptable because why would he dare or she dare take the decision where the involvement has not been made? So the question for that is more kind of how do you leave those kind of situations where the process of doing things is different? Decision-making, communication, time management, the socialization aspect, personal versus business. How do you leave this?
And it takes us to one point that's very important when we talk about culture, is that in Sonia's example, it was a national culture difference, Dutch versus French. But within the cultural element, there's also the corporate culture. And all these questions that we're dealing with today should make you really well aware of not only where you're going to work, because as we live today with the lockdown and so on, it almost doesn't matter where you are, which country, you're at home, okay? So you're working from home. Now, then what prevails is certainly, and what is so important is the corporate culture, the values and the culture of your company. And because we are in a different situation and we're suffering from a very challenging time, taking a step back and looking at what are those corporate rules, cultural values that are in the company that I'm a part of, and looking at those values, do they correspond to where I want to be, where I am, and how can I improve that from my perspective, but also from my surroundings, so the colleagues working with me, and in your next moves, because life is not linear and we have ups and downs and we change careers and we change companies. Having that in the back of your mind as to what fits you best when you are going to recruit your next company rather than your company recruiting you. Are things that you can write down for you as learning components moving forward. And that's also a very important part of things we had in mind when we put that topic on the table for today, looking at culture, not just from a national perspective or cultural differences, looking at different countries, but also looking at different companies and how they operate. And does that suit you? And do you fit in? And do they fit you in that line of thought? So I think that's important. Catherine, I think at the beginning you wanted to say something and you never managed to grab the mic. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I wanted to share my experience. So I am Brazilian. I live in France and I work in a Japanese company in a Belgian office for 𝐓𝐚𝐥𝐤 organization. So when we have meetings, we have, for example, myself, so Brazilian in France, a Colombia that lives in Italy, a Syrian guy that is in German, and it's really it brings a lot of complexity on the management of the team, especially when we want to work in a collaborative way, and things that get a level of, I would say, even stress and tension in the meetings because our body languages are different. Sometimes some messages are passed across and are not perceived the same way. So the Latins one, like me and my Colombian girl, we talk, we do a lot of movements, we bring a lot of chaos into the room, and the other people that are more, and it's, for me, it's when I get out of meetings like this, I'm really tired. Because I know I have to be like a radar, catching up everything to be able to adapt, and it's a lot of effort. And in the other way, we can control ourselves, but we cannot. I don't feel myself being able to act also on the perceptions of others in regards of that, and how to handle this tension in the room that sometimes just come from these small differences in culture. And for me, it's very difficult as exercise.
And is your company aware of this and trying to do something about it?
I don't think they. I mean, they. I think the president, which is Japanese, himself, because I think he's even more lost with all of us in the room. But there is no action actually to improve, or I don't know if we can put rules in this case, because it's really something that there's not right or wrong, right? Each person acts based on their own culture and environment, but I find this really it's sometimes stressful, and it's really drains energy. Just this exercise is really draining in energy.
Any idea in the group of what sort of thing could be done to maybe not fix it, but address those kind of challenges? That is certainly not only yours, by the way.
No, I'm living in the same boat there, being German, living in the States, working for a, well, American company whose mother company is Spanish. So there are various aspects coming in, and I completely understand, Catherine. It's a struggle every day. How do you speak? I'm used to be very direct, but I know it's not the right place to be that with most people. So one thing that I have done from my side when I meet new people, I make them aware of that. And I ask them to tell me if what I say came down in a way that they think might not be the right way, because that's the only way that will help me to adjust that with that person. So I'm trying to live that more on a one-on-one basis. In a group meeting, it's very difficult to do because you have so many different people, and you can't make it everybody right, because what you do to how you behave to one person, the other person might find offensive. So it is a struggle, and it has been for me for a long time. And so often my German background just gets the better of me, whether I want it or not. So that's not an easy thing. One thing, I don't know whether that helps, but after our within class that we took, my three buddies, group buddies, and I, one of them actually suggested a book, and that's called Nonviolent Communication. And we decided to slowly work through this, because as I started reading it, I was like, wow, there is so much in how you word something, how you are perceived by somebody else. And so we made it to ourselves, because we wanted to stay in touch as a task, that we kind of work through that together and practice on each other. And I'm curious to see how that is coming out in the end. but I think it helps, and it's very aligned with Savoir-Relier, I think, because you go down to the facts. You really try, if somebody says something to you, try to find out, is that truly what he means? Because very often something completely different is behind it.
Yeah. One thing that you said, Patricia, that I would like to point and to really address is the question of awareness. And to your point, Catherine, about and to Philip's question about, is the company aware? Raising awareness in your subgroup and in the company that this can be an issue, and particularly again in the time we live, there are decisions to be made. To give you an example, at our level, managing groups, managing teams, and doing some coaching, I have made a rule that I will not take any group higher than 18 people, period. When usually I can have groups of 40 people when we're face to face, or when we have a mix. But I made it a rule, and actually even lower than that, to limit the potential loss of information and a quality type of interaction. And 18 is already a lot. So applied to your environment, rather than having big meetings with 8, 12 people, maybe having group meetings that are smaller, let's say 6 people maximum, so you can have this positive energy and sharing with qualitative input and qualitative output, to give room for everyone to exist. You know, this idea of a check-in when you do a meeting, when you give the floor to everyone for 1 minute so that people can say what's their state of mind when they go into the meeting, so that there is a better awareness of who's there and what's going on. That raising awareness is absolutely critical to make this atmosphere of work and sharing more constructive and positive, and not to leave anyone out as well. And for you to give the time that you mentioned, Patricia, about having not only this awareness for yourself, but helping others have the awareness. And when you started talking about this topic, I had in mind, you know, when you watch political debates on TV, and how sometimes the journalist runs it such that everybody can speak and you can actually listen. And sometimes you have journalists who can't handle it, and people just talk over one another, and you lose the whole thing. I mean, there's no quality. You don't get anything out of the meeting, not the people on stage, but not even the viewers. Well, in meetings and in business, giving time for people to talk like we're doing now, we respect one another, we listen to one another, and we try to understand. I think that can make a big difference from those meetings where everybody's all over the place, or the ones who are shy never say a word. So that's also part of it, probably.
Yeah, that's something I have noticed in meetings, that when certain people are in there, certain other people just quiet down and don't say anything anymore. And I have made a point where I can to basically call these folks out and say, hey, what do you think about this? To really get their opinion, because otherwise you just miss out on some potentially important information.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Here.
Hello, Lynn.
Hi, how are you?
Fine.
When you're discussing like these group sessions, are you referring to peer-to-peer group sessions? Are you referring to a hierarchical, like as if you're going, like an executive is wanting to know about standard or regular entry-level associates, and they're wanting feedback? Is it peer-to-peer that you're referring to?
You're talking to Catherine, right?
Anybody.
Anyone. Okay.
Anybody who would like to give feedback on how group dynamics and allowing people, are you providing information to a group? Or are you like, it has to be like, what's the intention of the meeting? What's the intention of why you're here? Are you here just to share as a representative to share information, and that there's no feedback required, right? Yeah. Or are you there to look for information to improve a process, or how could we improve this? And is it peer to, or like a management executive level with an executive, or is it with associate to associate?
Yeah, it sure is. You're right, Evelyn, to bring that up, because it will be different from type of meeting. And if you have like a plenary when you're giving a lecture and everybody's just there to take notes, it's a very different story from having a shared meeting. My understanding of what Catherine was saying was more the peer meetings where you have to put things in common and you have to come up with solutions and you have to address problems and you have to make the business move forward. Am I correct, Catherine, when I say that?
Today we work much more in matrix systems where you have people from different departments that need to interact, that you don't have really hierarchical links sometimes. So you have a project leader, but you have all the other collaborators that will work in a project that needs to go in a certain direction. And I see in these very complex organizations, this matrix, that's where you bring really a lot of complexity in the interactions, because for the group to work smooth, you need to be really aligned, even in the communication, so you don't have misunderstandings, you don't have things that are not said because of these communication issues. And in this very transversal projects where you have this kind of management that is not hierarchical, I think this problematic is even more present. After, I think, even if you look to a linear structure, I think this is also linked to the culture. In some cultures, you, like in my experience with the Dutch people, you don't have really lines that breaks. People are much more free to discuss, and we will have much more fluid communication. In other cultures like the Japanese one, these hierarchical lines make really barriers on the communication, so you're not gonna dare to say things to your higher person. I was more thinking on these projects or organizations that are very much in matrices, that you don't really care about the hierarchy, but you need to work with different departments and people in different positions, more or less, in teams. Teams.
So yeah, indeed, lots of different situations and complexity of work ethics, work practices, and how you organize your meetings. The maybe piece of advice at this stage, particularly right now, is again to have more qualitative meetings, so fewer people, breaking them down, and maybe structuring your meetings so that you don't have long meetings, but you shorten the time. It puts a little bit of pressure, but it also forces you to have a greater organization. And the check-in, check-out for those meetings, if there are not too many of you, if you say around 6 people in a meeting, the efficiency of taking everyone in at the beginning with the check-in and making sure that at the end there is a check-out where everyone says, this is my takeaway from this meeting, and this is what I'm going to do thanks to this meeting. It again builds awareness, because that allows you to sometimes realize that there's hardly any takeaway for one person in the group. Therefore, you may realize that this person should not have been invited to that meeting. And next time, you think twice about making sure who's around the table and what for. So the purpose is clearer and the efficiency is higher, and people feel more comfortable to speak up and to be a part of it because they have something to contribute and something to get out of it. It's that level of reciprocity that you gain in building these conditions for efficiency and for well-being in the meeting. So
I think
Ayman, you have something to say. I'm sorry, his hand up, right? Or you're saying goodbye? Your microphone is not on, Ayman.
Sorry,
yeah.
Professor, go ahead, please. I'll follow you.
Something to check.
No, okay, very quick. I just wanted to say that when you structure a meeting where you have different cultures or different perspective, and as Catherine explained, it's a bit of a mess because you don't understand each other. Some behavior are acceptable for some people and different for some others. I think it's interesting to see that it's actually those cultural differences exacerbate the problems. But in fact, in the reality, even in a monoculture kind of meeting, you have many, many differences. And because we look alike and we speak the same way, etc., we believe there's no differences. But in fact, there's a lot of differences, introvert versus extroverts, political, convictions, vision on strategy, etc. So the potential of misunderstanding is also very big in very monoculture type of group. So the only difference is that it's very visible when it's different culture. And I think what Valerie said is that to actually address that, probably a bit of structure is required. So in other words, you're going to have to set some rules, and some rules is to say, well, we have to make sure, for example, that everybody speaks. And sometimes it's because people don't speak because they are shy, but also sometimes they do not say anything because it's not in their culture, and they say, no, I'm not allowed to speak now. If you set some rules and say, in these meetings, we're going to have to play those kind of rules, then maybe it's a bit formal, and I know that some countries don't like this, but to clear up to make people comfortable about the rules that we are going to use in that meeting to decide or not to decide, and say maybe at the end of the day, I am the leader and I will take the decision. That's the way it's going to work this time. But next meeting is going to be, okay, we're going to have a consensus on this. You set some rules and you make people more comfortable about what they can say or not say, but also clarify the rule that you want to apply. It might be different from one meeting to another. So it's not just a cultural thing, it's also adapting the need of the meeting and the contribution of every single person in the room. So, but discipline and rules actually probably one way of dealing with those complex issues.
Yeah, structure and freedom. Amen. This is going to be our last question because we are past our time. So go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to share my experience being in the Middle East. I'm from Beirut, and I work with different companies that are sometimes in as far as Sydney and as far as California. So we do have a lot of challenges, especially in scheduling meetings between the different parties. So what I do is I have this concept of sharing the pain. So one time I really have to wake up very early, and the next time somebody in Sydney might have to do the same. The third time somebody in California will have to do that. So we have this rolling scheduling on different times. This is the first point. The second point about in meetings and about the cultural interpretations, even body language is different from one culture to another. So what I try to do is I try to, at the beginning, I try to explain what my body language or my type of discussion or my type of command in management or anything that might be interpreted wrong. I would give the freedom for everybody to just tell me if they feel offended or if they feel that they have something against it. And I try to create this coming from a software development background. We have the definition of complete for user stories or for models. So we have this definition of meanings for different things. So sometimes we do exchange, by the way, the cultural things. So we use terms, or we use some language, or we use some gestures from other cultures, just to kind of mix the feelings together. Third thing is when there's something in Amazon which I like, is the 2 pizza rule. They have this rule where a group of people or a team should not be larger than being able to be fed by 2 pizzas. So if 2 pizzas can feed the team, that would be the maximum size of a team. I try to follow that. That's Bezos. So that's his idea. And I would like to suggest also for managing meetings a book called Six Thinking Hats. So it's a really nice book that allows you to have this separate perspective where you isolate the thought process of people into 6 different processes, and this proved to be a very feasible way of managing teams in meetings, especially when you have a larger audience. So that's my 2 cents
Thank you, Ayman. I would like to thank everyone for not only sharing their stories, but also their experience and knowledge. It was very rich, very, very positive, and very constructive as always. Concluding maybe on the word of gesture and importance of language, because you know how important this is to me personally, and coming from a linguistic background, and what Patricia was saying about the way you talk, and the awareness you can raise about this story about using but all the time rather than and those sort of things that can change a lot of the way you interact. Just little words like this that can offend or affect, or some gestures. And just for an anecdote to conclude, we saw recently The Darkest Hours with about Winston Churchill on Netflix, a movie looking at the beginning of the war and how Churchill took over at when the war started, and he had this gesture of victory, but he did put it the wrong way. And his secretary told him how this didn't mean victory for the younger generation, but it meant something else. And really something else. And so knowing that some gestures can offend or affect people means that you don't know, and the more aware you make yourself and others about what your gestures do to people, or language does to people, is a way, again, of raising awareness and respect and improving the quality of your interactions. Thank you again for this great moment. We'll have our monthly gatherings. We have changed the title because we thought the fireside actually, there's a dog somewhere. It's not mine. So that to conclude the meeting, we decided to move from fireside chat to the talk, as we're moving away from winter and towards spring, even though it's for some of you still heart of winter. So we look forward to sharing with you a bit more in our talk with Savoir-Relier, and stay tuned, because we're working hard on developing new features. And thank you, Camila, and thank you, Camille, and the whole team. Francesco is here also with us, helping us develop more content and more courses that will soon be available for you to pursue and also continue to exchange with us. So we look forward to seeing you next month, and stay tuned with our next moves.
Just a quick
being with you.
Yeah, just a quick word. If you have a specific topic that you want next month to be about, don't hesitate to put it here in the chat, or in a LinkedIn group, or in Facebook. We always check for ideas of new topics. So there you go.
Carlos suggested one. Why managers do not learn from success. Ooh, that's an interesting one. Thank you, Carlos.
Just a quick point. If you have, of course, in 30 minutes, it's very difficult to address that complex issue. If there are things that you believe has not been developed enough, a question that you have, put it down and we will answer. All right? Promise.